Hi, it's maintenance day at DIY Doctor in our new workshop, and part of that maintenance is keeping all of our blades sharp. That's chisels, plane blades, etc. Hitherto we have used a whetstone, which you can see all about in a separate video, dispelling some of the myths about a whetstone, oil stone, water stones, etc. And we've always used that. Historically we've used that because we found it the best way of getting a fantastic edge onto our blades. It takes a lot of practice to get good at it, to produce the edge that you need to practice, but we have now been sent a new tool which, although I don't want to say this is redundant, we haven't found anything the new tool can't do yet. So let's hang that up for a second. The new tool is the Precision Tool Sharpening System from Sharp Edge. I think they're a G-Sharp company. They've got a website at chisel-sharpener.co.uk. Go and have a look. And it's an incredible system based on diamonds for sharpening your chisels and plane blades of any size. So the first thing that we'll do before we tell you how it works is we'll have a look at the box and run through the bits as they will arrive for you. The first thing, obviously, is the base that I have here. We'll show you that's come out of the box. This is what it is. It is an adjustable plate sharpening holder. I'll explain the plates in a moment, but quite clearly the chisel sits on here. The sharpening plate is adjusted to the angle. The angle is marked on the slider here, and when you've set that to the correct angle, that's tightened up and you begin to sharpen across the chisel like this. Until now, chisel sharpening involves putting something like a whetstone on the bench and moving the chisel to sharpen it. Now the chisel stays exactly where it is and the machine sharpens it. So let's have a look at how that happens. Inside this little box we get our sharpening plates, our diamond plates. There are 4 of them. There's a 1500 grit, which is a very, very fine grit. An 800 grit, simply just a fine grit. Ignore those foils for a moment. Put those out of the way. A 400 grit coarse and a 200 grit extra coarse. So for those of you that use the chisels for opening tins of paint or whatever, you would start with the extra coarse, move back through to the 1500 extra fine to sharpen your chisel. So how does that work? So rather than do it on this one, which is set, I've screwed this to my workbench. I have a plate that this sits on, and what I've done here is a little tip for you at home if you'd like to. A little Tupperware container with all of these bits in, a couple of screws in the bottom of the Tupperware container, so if I pick that up you can see that everything that I need for my chisel sharpening is in the same place, so I can hang that lot up, nothing's going to fall away. So let's put the new stuff out of the way for a moment. We're going to talk about these foils in just a second. So all of this comes with the set, and we'll get the old ones out because our hands are a little bit dirty. So also in the set, the 4 sharpening stones, comes 3 foils. Okay, now these foils are for polishing the chisel or the plane blade after you've sharpened it, and the reason that we do that is that it's called burnishing. And the reason that we do that is because the enemy of a chisel or a plane blade is friction. So we want to keep everything that we're working with nicely polished, nice and smooth, no scratches on the face of the blade at all, nothing digs into the timber, it slides right the way across it. So we polish, after sharpening we polish the chisel, and that keeps it smooth and allows it to run through the timber beautifully. Okay, we also get a little magnetic plate onto which, in this case, I am going to put the 1500 grit extra fine diamond plate. That's magnetic. and that drops into place there, and I'm going to use that to take the burr off of the chisel. When I've sharpened it, I'm going to run that over the back of the chisel to take the burrs off. Okay. Now, by demonstrating on the new one, I think is going to be better. I'll show you how the plate system slots into place. So we're going to use a chisel in a moment that is absolutely brand new to dispel the myth that it is cheaper to buy a new set of chisels than it is to buy a good chisel sharpener. And make no mistake, this is a good chisel sharpener. This is, the trade use this, we use this, and there's absolutely no reason in the world, it's so simple, why you shouldn't use it as well. But it is a great chisel sharpener. So we're going to use a brand new chisel to prove to you that chisels don't come as sharp as you think they do. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to take our 400 grit coarse diamond plate, and we're going to put it in to the adjustable plate of sharp edge. We are then going to use the slider to bring that down to the required angle, which in the case of this chisel is 25 degrees. If you want to know more about why chisels have two bevels on them, there's a little bit about it on our whetstone video, but I will tell you briefly that chisels come with two angles, as you will see from our web page on sharpening chisels. One is the grinding angle, and that's normally around about 30 degrees. So that's the angle of the chisel from the heel down to the edge, about 30 degrees. If we tried to sharpen along that bevel, there'd be a great deal of friction involved. So another angle is set onto that edge at around about 25 degrees. There's no rules. It doesn't have to be 25, it can be 26 or 24. But as long as it's exactly the same along the full length of the edge of that chisel, it doesn't matter. The point is that the sharper, that it's not 30, it's not the same as the rest of it, and there's less friction. So we'll explain a little bit more about that later on. So having put our diamond grit in there, we set this to the correct angle. You'll see a close-up of this, and I'm going to set this one to 25 just to show you. So I'm hoping you can see, if the camera can zoom in on that, you can see I've set that on the datum line at 25 degrees, and simply tighten up and we're ready to go. So let's, having shown you in close-up how that works, we'll put that back and we'll put this into the one that we're going to use. So that's in my magnetic plate. Slide this across to 25 degrees, and then I said I was going to show you that chisels, when you buy them, it's not as cheap as you think. Here's a brand new chisel that we bought from our tool store yesterday. That was, and to show you that it's brand new, if the camera zooms in on that, you can still see the little cable tie stays that decent quality chisels come with to stop it falling out and cutting you. So we'll get some snips and we'll cut the stays, and we'll take, now we've deliberately used a kind of mid-range chisel, not the best quality, but a mid-range chisel, somewhere in the price bracket we would expect home improvers to buy, and that's brand new. You've just seen me take it out of the packet. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get a post-it note, and I'm going to put it on this board, stick the edge down there, and I'd like the camera to zoom in and watch me take this brand new chisel, and I'm not going to apply a huge amount of pressure because I'm going to do the same thing when I've sharpened it, and you'll see the difference, and I'm going to run it across this paper. Okay. Now you can see, I'm hoping, the line there. Can the camera see that line? I'm hoping it can. If I fold that in half, you can see that it has scored it. And I'm going to try and pull that apart. Okay, now that's a fair bit of pulling power there, so you can see it hasn't cut through. If I really, no, No, that's not going to come apart. So although it's scored it, that's definitely not cut through. Okay, now that's a brand new chisel. When I've sharpened the chisel, we're going to do the same thing and we'll see what happens. And I'm not going to put any pressure on the second time. So we have now set this to 25 degrees. The final piece in the sharp edge precision tool sharpener is called a blade spacer. Okay, now we slot that into one of the 6 little slots there, and the reason for having that there is we're going to hold the chisel up against that and make sure this is movable, because we want the chisel as much in the middle of the tool as we can get it. So I'm hoping you can see from there that that chisel, this incidentally is a 38mm chisel, or 1.5 inch in old money, and we're going to set that into the middle of our tool. Now because we've set this at 25 degrees, I'm going to push the chisel into our diamond plate, and you will see the plate rise up around about 0.5 millimeter. I'm not going to force it in, I'm just going to push it in gently. Watch that rise 0.5 millimeter, and then I know that as much of that plate is in contact with the chisel as I like it to be. And then it's a dead simple matter of holding this quite tight with my left hand against the spacer, moving this about 6 times. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, take that off, and then using my 1500 grit on its magnetic holder, just run that across the back of the chisel, making sure it's completely flat against the back, and then feeling for any little burrs. Okay, so there's nothing there. Now I'll do that 2 or 3 times. Push that against the blade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take it out and feel the burr on there. Get rid of the burr. Lovely. Put that in the centre again. Push it in. There's no effort going into this at all. I don't have to worry about the angle because it's preset. I don't have to worry about polishing the blade very much because the very fine grit is doing it. And as you can see, I just dropped that, but the plate stayed in place, so the magnets are very strong. Centre that again, push that in until the plate lifts. Take it out, deburr. Lovely. And now I'm going to loosen this and take my coarse grit plate out, put my 800 fine grit in. And incidentally, we get questions about, you know, how quickly do these plates wear out. Well, we haven't managed to wear one out yet. I would suggest probably 4 or 5 months of good use, but they're quite cheap to buy replacement blades. Centre that again with the fine plate in, push that against so it just lifts it slightly, and then the same process. Like that, a bit of a deburr. The thing about deburring is to make absolutely sure that the plate that we're using for deburring is flat against the chisel. Otherwise we're sharpening from the back of the chisel, which isn't very good. Okay, that's lovely. So what we'll do now is move the slot out. We'll get our piece of notepad. So from the close-ups you can see that I've created the new bevel on the chisel. Here's the chisel, here's the paper, and let's see what happens this time. Perfectly clean cut, and we can do that time after time. That's how sharp we can now get our kit using sharp edge. All that remains to do is to stick one of the foil plates on the back of one of the grit plates, turn it over in the machine. The foil plate allows us to see the, let me just show you that happening. We can talk about it. Let's get the foil plates off. So we can apply the foil, not very square I'm afraid in this case, but the foil allows us to see the number of the plates that we're using. So we can now use both sides of this. So we're going to turn that over so that the diamonds are facing the machine. Take that one out, and we're going to put the foil so that that's now our blade. Put that down to our 25 degrees, tighten up again and polish the edge of that chisel. Okay, that's the edge polished, and then what we would do is pull that out, put that into our backing plate so we can burnish the back of our chisel, and it doesn't hurt if we burnish more than just the bit that we've cut. So give that a good burnish, a good polish using the foil, and we can start with the smaller foil, head up to the bigger foil, and we're going to get a nice polished blade that, as you've seen, is going to allow us to cut anything into confetti. So this is the Sharp Edge Precision Tool Sharpening System from G-Sharp. We think it's fantastic. For us, it's done away with the whetstone in 99.9% of cases. There isn't the training involved for our youngsters. We still train them to use a whetstone, but in order to get the job done quickly, we can move on to this and have a chisel sharpened in a matter of seconds. Or at least, you know, a couple of minutes as opposed to half an hour. We've got hundreds of chisels, as you can imagine, so maintenance day is what it says, it's a day. This reduces that by half. Pleased to introduce it, hope you come and get one, and look forward to hearing your comments.